Hey people, it's me again. So, anyways, I'm doing my afternoon walk as far as that goes. So, it's one of the little things I had talked about periodically on my channel at that point, you know, in a way, it's just simply like me kind of looking back at certain things that were going on, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, 30 years, 35 years. But it's just one of those little things that I do. So, I think I'm gonna do reverse chronological order instead, So, anyways, 5 years ago was the beginning of the pandemic, as in terms of like the lockdowns and the craziness and all of that, So, not that I really wanted to go into it on detail of that sort, but I feel like, looking back at all of that, it was just politicized simply because it occurred on the presidential election year. And I think that was just simply the case. If the pandemic occurred on not an election year at all, then it would have been completely different. So that's just something that I had to kind of say. And I would probably say it again so many times, because if the pandemic didn't occur, Trump would have gotten reelected in 2020, and then last year he would have been termed out, and then therefore everybody would breathe a sigh of relief that he's termed out. And then there's President Kamala Harris, and look what happened here. Now we have Trump as president again. So whose fault is that? So that's just something I had to kind of point out here. I forgot where these this plant that I'm looking at here. I thought these were like tea trees. Yeah. And I felt like I wanted to say something about like reading the tea leaves and all because of that. Yeah. So, anyways, that's what I was kind of saying about that. It just kind of feels weird. That was like 5 years ago. But 10 years ago I think it was like the beginning of the woke SJW ideology in some ways of that sort. And especially how it was like that way when it came to South Park. Because I think I watched a bit of that season, I think. As far as when they introduced PC Principal and some of his antics and all that. You know what I mean? So that's just one of the things there. And then 15 years ago, that was like the beginning of the Tea Party movement, because of how every like Republican was penis envy of Obama at that point, and that was kind of like the real crutch of it. So anyways, that was like the thing, and then it kind of, but it was like a little bit later on South Park where they had an episode like the TMI episode. So, but I'm trying to remember like what was the highlight of that season on South Park in 2010. But that whole entire time, if I remember correctly, when it came to 2010, there was of course, that was when like Justin Bieber was being popular at that point in time, and now you don't really hear much about Justin Bieber anymore. Well, I think that's just simply because he was just a bit of a has-been at that point now. It's just like Donny Osmond or any of the other those teen idols at some point, because once they get past a certain age, then they're kind of considered to be a has-been of that sort. But he was like one of the first artists that got their start on YouTube at that point. So that was one of the things there. Speaking of which, like 20 years ago was like the beginning of YouTube. And then I think in terms of like technology, it was completely different. Back then, smartphones like this in my hand didn't even exist yet. So, anyways, I think I want to head back to the house as far as that goes. But still, as I was saying about this, that in terms of technology, the phone that I have in my hand didn't exist back then. Although I think when it came to YouTube itself, the other things were there, as far as flash video. And then back in the day when you had to have a flash player in order to watch YouTube. Just as much as like playing all the flash games and stuff like that. And even back then, like 25 years ago, there was like Shockwave. Because I remember like using Shockwave to play like one of those South Park games, and all those other type of games that they had back then. But that was right at the time when practically everybody was on the internet, but then like 30 years ago was when, in terms of like the internet at that point, it was all dial-up, and broadband didn't exist just yet. It was there, but it was at its nascent stages, as far as cable and DSL, but in a way, I had to think about, do I like having, access to the internet all the time these days at this point, since I have my phone in my hand and all of this. But I don't know, I feel like it is a whole lot easier nowadays than compared to how it was back then, where you had to have a second phone line if you want to be on the internet all the time, because otherwise you have to what's that word again? I forgot that word. You have to delegate, like, which people could be on the internet at a certain time and all of that. And especially when it came to, the phone, there. And that was one of the biggest problems of all that. What's that? But then, like, 30 years ago, I mean, that was completely different. But that was when, I mean, not 30 years ago, 35 years ago was when, was also when, like, having a computer was considered to be a luxury, And at that time, I was the only one in my class to have a computer. And that was also due to having dysgraphia in a way, even though I wasn't necessarily diagnosed with dysgraphia, but dysgraphia kind of, I fit like the symptoms of having dysgraphia at the time. Because I couldn't write that well, and it was hurts to write that much. And it's easier for me to do all that on a computer rather than just write it out because of that. So I need to like sit down for a moment. So, anyways, I guess that's probably it. So, talk to you guys later.